Will the U.S. government soon rank among the world's largest holders of XRP? This Brad Garlinghouse interview is a must-listen. As we proceed, I will provide you with my background. This is crazy. Come on, let's play. The CEO of Ripple is Brad Garlinghouse. The native token of the decentralized blockchain XRP ledger is Ripple's XRP. According to litigios, the complaint against Ripple was still pending as of our most recent communication with SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce. Now where is it? Because we began to hear last night that it might be going extinct. We have established a consensus with the staff. Typically, after reaching a consensus, the staff recommends something to the commission, which then votes on it. We are therefore certain that we have reached a consensus with the personnel whenever we make announcements regarding that. To date, the commission has not cast a vote. However, we have decided to ignore it and go forward. In fact, we're getting a possible $125 million fine had been placed in escrow by the SEC. In reality, we're reclaiming the majority of it, including the interest accrued during the process. And it's just proof, in my opinion, that the Gensler SEC was breaking the law, and I believe we're witnessing a far more positive pro-innovation trend because of the new leadership at the White House and the SEC. We seek domestic growth in these businesses. What's left over after you mention that, in the worst situation, the majority of the $125 million you have saved in that small fund? Are you able to provide us with some? The SEC will receive $50 million in the end. $50 million will be given to the U.S. government. We've even discussed releasing that in XRP. Look, consider. Imagine if the U.S. government were to become one of the largest holders of XRP. Of course, they wouldn't have billions, but they would get 25 million XRP for $50 million. If XRP is or will be adopted by the United States as the currency that they wish to use to move values, stable coins, and custody, then 25 million XRP could seriously harm the nation's ability to pay off its debt. If the U.S. wants to have all of this cryptocurrency, Ripple custody, they will need a crypto custody service. We can get here in a lot of different ways, don't we? We should continue. Ultimately, this is a significant advancement. I believe that if you take a closer look at this, the Trump administration is definitely fulfilling its promises. Scott Bessent, David Sachs spearheading the White House effort, and Paul Atkins, who I believe was confirmed yesterday. These individuals are concerned with ways to ensure that, with reasonable regulation, this industry can flourish domestically. In a flash, Scott Bessent is the treasurer and David Sachs is the crypto czar. Then there's the other individual he brought up. Geez. The day has been long. Undoubtedly, Paul Atkins is already receiving Paul Atkins, SEC. All right, Paul Atkins is aware of the significance of the Ripple case and is working to get him involved. This is everything we've ever desired, really. We were looking for someone that supported innovation and Ripple, and he most certainly is. I apologize for complaining. I spent about 2.5 hours and 10 minutes streaming. My thoughts are somewhat confirmed. Consider yesterday. These individuals are concerned with ways to ensure that with reasonable regulation and common sense, this industry may flourish domestically. And for the past 4 years, we haven't had that. What kind of common sense regulation would you like to see? Did you speak with David Sachs? What have you said to? Hey David, this needs to be prominent at the very least. Legislation pertaining to stable coins, and what is commonly referred to as a market structure law, are the two initiatives with the greatest traction on Capitol Hill. Stablecoin laws, since we still don't know exactly what they are. What type of licensing is suitable, and are banks engaged or not? We believe that the New York Department of Financial Services New York Trust License, which Ripple recently obtained to launch our stablecoin, is the gold standard for market regulation. However, it is crucial to have federal regulation that gives big entities like USDC, Circle, and Tether certainty. I believe that will happen sooner rather than later. As you are aware, President Trump has taken significant pro-crypto actions. It must be fantastic for someone like you. But the price of, let's say, Bitcoin, which peaked at almost $107,000 following the election, is far from that now. It has been a market decline, but I believe we are at about $86,000 in change. This is courageous. Does she intend to go there? Will she go there? When do you think this will start to rise again? Because there have been a lot of irrational predictions that Bitcoin will drop to at least $250,000 by the end of this year. Yes, In light of that, your previous guest Larry Fink mentioned just adopting a long-term perspective. I hardly give it much thought in such a short period of time. I consider the macro trends affecting the XRP ecosystem and the cryptocurrency sector. Over the past 90 days, XRP has been the top-performing major cryptocurrency. What does that look like over the next 3 years is what we consider. I have a lot of hope. Ripple recently revealed our biggest acquisition to date, which is actually among the biggest in the whole cryptocurrency market. In the midst of Tariff Palooza on Tuesday of this week, we made the announcement. We're betting on where the world will be in 3 years, not what will happen in the next 6 months, although I'm not precisely sure what will happen with the tariffs. A year ago, would you have made that purchase? Absolutely not. In the US, the SEC and even other Biden administration components were the targets of a concerted assault by numerous agencies. Now we're discovering that more is out. As you pointed out in your opening, the IRS had anti-crypto regulations that were illogical. Without having an equal offset to their balance sheet, banks were not even permitted to reasonably hold cryptocurrency, which basically makes no sense for a bank to even be involved in this sector. It is a legitimate industry. Imply that the administration was not paying attention to what customers wanted. The voters' voice and desires were not being heard. Now there is a noticeable shift in all areas. A year ago, such an acquisition wouldn't have made sense, but now it makes a lot of sense. It's just incredible. I'm thinking about you and wondering if it was 2 or 3 years ago. How long have you all been subjected to this lawsuit? December 22nd, 2020. In other words, 4.5 years. We've been conversing, and I wondered, what's going to happen here? You seem to be on the verge of this situation finally ending. In addition to being beneficial for XRP and Ripple, it is also beneficial for the industry as a whole. We oppose the outsourcing of these industries, and the last 4 years have been nearly the exact opposite. We believe that pushing them to offshore corporations is safer, you know. What is your workforce size? Let's make it clear to everyone how many people were moved up. We currently employ over 1,100 people as a result of our acquisition. That's amazing. These are well-paying positions. Additionally, as you and I have already discussed, during the 4 years of the Biden administration, we hired more people abroad than domestically. I am an American citizen who was raised in Kansas. I want to employ people here. Here we have some of the world's top talent. However, investing in a market where we couldn't attract clients didn't make sense. We were unable to observe the benefits of a more improved and straightforward cross-border payment settlement for banks. These technologies have the potential to significantly improve consumer experiences and enterprises, but we must be able to reach these audiences. Yes, I believe the Winklevoss brothers were turned down for their attempt to create an ETF more than 10 years ago. Yes, that made it possible for people to invest in Bitcoin, and it was a complete failure. We now have a lot of those, and an XRP ETF was introduced this week, right? Although it hasn't gone live in the US yet, we've had, I believe, 11 separate applications to launch an ETF here in the US. We do trade with countries outside of the US. This is long overdue, and a step toward a safer, more established method of market participation. This week we spent $1.25 billion to acquire Hidden Road, which is referred to as a prime broker. And this makes it possible for even bigger organizations, like BlackRock, the largest financial institutions on Wall Street, to enter this market in a way that makes sense to them and is safer. Continue to hold on for a second. Without